In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, back in the hills of Western New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. I'm so glad you've joined me today for another teaching episode where we blaze through some old articles and explain the eternal technical concepts beneath them and the eternal psychological concepts for that matter. And then we will get all caught up. So this one, I actually read this one. This is some, I want to say fan mail, basically. I read it on my original show, on Computer Exorcist Show, back in 2022. And I want to read it because I was going through old papers, and I want to read it because it was so hysterical, and I want to defend myself from it. So if y'all go to Amazon and look at the entry for my book, How to Protect Yourself from Your Computer, I have all high ratings except for one. One guy gave me a 1-star rating. And by the way, you can buy my book anywhere in the world. You don't have to buy it on Amazon because we like the ability to buy it anywhere. All right, so this guy gave me a 1-star rating. And here goes. Unacceptable misinformation. The fact that Mark Anthony actually, he wrote Mark Antony, like the Roman guy. All right, the fact that Mark Antony actually has some good advice here, like Mint is a good OS and clean your computer, might lead people to argue it should be bumped up at least a little bit. But that makes me more scared. There are nuggets of good information that'll convince people to give his opinions a shot, and then they'll stop installing updates! Folks, check this out! And then he shows the nvd.nist.gov. This is the U.S. government's list of known program vulnerabilities. Search for the programs you use. You may be shocked by how vulnerable some of them were in their past versions. The reason they aren't anymore? Updates. The very thing this clown wants you to categorically stop installing. Well, alright, time out for a second. Alright, first of all, updates don't make the world a better place. Updates are band-aids because the original product was so sloppy. The original product was made by some slob, and they found holes all over it because the original slob didn't bother to do any quality control. That's the real reason. That's the real reason for updates, okay? So he goes on. Now, you may argue that vulnerabilities are created by updates. That's absolutely true, but the thing is, those vulnerabilities are called 0 days. That means the vulnerability has been public known for 0 days. So what he's saying is, 0-day vulnerabilities have nothing to do with updates. They found them on the 0 day. The real issue, what he didn't mention is, whenever an update is made, almost inevitably, whenever an update is made, it patches one thing and then damages 2, 3, or 10 other things. And in the case of a Windows Update attack, every year or two, they'll have some massive one that destroys people's computers. And remember, there's no recourse, right? If you look at the user agreement, it says you agree to hold them harmless even if and when Microsoft destroys your computer. I wondered why, for years I wondered why no one was doing class actions against all these companies. But it turns out, in all of these user agreements, when you click OK, you don't realize that you are agreeing to waive your right to a class action. Anyways, so he says, If you don't, a child could steal your data. I don't know what's going on there. If you install updates, you'll be vulnerable. And if you don't install updates, either way, none of those updates can protect you against the real problem in life. The biggest problem on planet Earth today is support scams, which are scary pop-ups with scary phone numbers, scary phone calls, using fully legalized tools to break into your computer. None of this will ever protect you against that. So this morning I gave a talk to a group in Michigan, and it was awesome, and thanks so much to all you who showed up to that. And the way I put it is this: what if you hired someone to come over and clean all the germs off your door handles, right? So you're obsessed over some tiny threat that isn't a big deal, but meanwhile, bad guys were just walking in and robbing your house, right? That's the deal there, is that updates only address tiny, tiny flaws in a what-if scenario that maybe, what if some guy might be able to get into your computer, maybe. Meanwhile, bad guys put giant scary pop-ups and they break in. All right. He goes on, while updates can leave junk files behind, they are trivially easy to clean up with many free tools like CCleaner. Alright, so updates have nothing to do with junk files, okay? All programs leave junk files, and junk files can never slow you down. Scummy computer guys make you think that junk files are the problem. And CCleaner destroys your computer, rips it to shreds, slows you down by 30-40%. Then he says forgetting a password can be catastrophic, but most services have a way of recovering passwords for precisely this reason. If you cannot recover some password, it's worth sacrificing some security for being able to remember the password. Alright, so that's not true at all. Most of my income is from people who've forgotten their passwords, right? They neglected to write them down. And then Apple has a brutal battle against you. Apple is the most brutal organization as far as passwords, but plenty of organizations just lock you out on a whim, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I go to bat for these people and do password resets for them. And I love how these jokers always think you have to make sacrifices for security, right? They make you think that it's some kind of trade-off. It's some kind of sliding scale where you have to give everything you've got just to have security. When in reality, you just write things on a piece of paper. See, they've never heard of reality before. You write your password down and you hide it under your bed and you're fine. I don't know who taught them this or what kind of demon taught these computer guys, but apparently they were told that you have to make sacrifices and you have to have hardships in life and don't write your passwords down. So again, that's why I wrote my certification, right? The Computer Exorcist certification teaches people how to protect consumers, because the jokers out there in this industry were trained to deal with macro level, corporate, organizational kind of things, and none of this happens on a consumer level. It's like physics and quantum physics, okay? So if you use the same password for multiple accounts and someone breaches one, they now have your password for every single account. Alright, so that part's true, but it's a half-truth, alright? If some person in your personal life hates you and happens to be some kind of genius, and they get your password, yeah, they can go through your other stuff. However, a couple things there. Number one, nobody does that, right? Bad guys will go through the back door of some organization and they'll grab all the passwords for one account. And they'll just get into that account. It's extremely rare. It's possible, sure, but it's extremely rare that someone is going to use that password and try to log into your other things with it. On top of that, the other thing is most of these companies have the two-factor scandal, so you still can't log into anything anyways because you have the two-factor scandals. You're going to sit there and get text messages on your phone anyway, so none of that matters. And finally, the real problem in this earth, again, we go back to germs on your door handle, right? That's an irrelevant problem. The real problem on this earth is everybody on this planet not being able to log into anything they own because they were told to make a horribly complicated password. All right, so I use the same simple password out of spite because the real problem on earth is everyone on earth forgets every password every day. Okay, so just write them down. And finally, if those accounts handle money, you're in very serious trouble, right? Again, so this guy is falling for that fear, that thing where the stakes are high and you have to worry and fear and worry about your money, right? All of your banks are covered by the 9-factor scandal at this point. If you try to log into a bank website, you have to log in using your computer, then it gets a cookie, then you get a text message, then you have to answer security questions. So no one's getting into your bank account, all right? As an IT professional for 20 years, Mark Anthony has absolutely no excuse for what he either believes or is claiming to believe. The advice is not only wrong, but it's dangerous in capital letters. Look, this is what I have seen. In 20 years, this is the reality that I have witnessed. All right, this isn't just me sitting behind a desk and reading a book and doing theoretical things for 20 years. I have gone to people's homes for 12 hours a day since 2009. And countless people before then, really. And all I see is people forgetting their password because they are tormented by some bank website that's run by a scumbag that makes them have a 9-character thing with alphabets and music notes and whatever else. And that's the real problem in life. So in this case, my experience does matter. Then, get this, he says, note, I learned of Mark Anthony's views listening to him promote his book on the radio. He actively promoted the views I address in this review on a local station. I did not glean it from his book, which I do not own and will not buy, but I'm trusting that he's accurately representing these contents of his book on the radio. So, he didn't even bother buying the book. He didn't even bother getting the book from a library. He didn't read it at all. He has no clue it's in my book. In my book, I actually talk about, hey, look, here are all the massive, massive drawbacks to update attacks. Oh, and by the way, it's totally up to you whether or not you protect yourself from those attacks, right? I'm just giving you the other side of the story. I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't do updates because bad. I'm giving you the story. I am the only one out there exposing the side effects of update attacks, all right? So here was my response. I actually plopped that response right on the Amazon page underneath his comment. I said, the fact that software products need to be updated constantly reveals the absolute absence of initial quality, right? Like I said, if they weren't so hyper complex and based on ancient underpinnings, they wouldn't need constant patching. And after 2 to 3 years of such update attacks, computers and smartphones become too slow to use, right? Think about the poor environment here. Think about the landfills. Additionally, during each update attack, there's a chance the machine will be completely hosed, and this is the reality that I see every day. And once you put a stop to the update attacks, the machines remain stable and fast for many years. Consumers can no longer protect themselves from update attacks on Windows machines and Samsung phones. In the book, I also mentioned that people should have the right to install update attacks in a controlled fashion. And also, by the way, and which is what I do, I install update attacks in a controlled fashion when they're needed, instead of allowing a chaotic bombardment of attacks that interrupt them during the workday and leave the machine busy and occupied. And moreover, the update attacks that come in are mostly what they call feature updates, right? They have critical security patches, which are fine if you really want to do them, but most of the updates are now feature updates, which add anti-features, which add ways for Microsoft or Apple or whoever to slow you down, to add more clutter that you didn't want, and to add more ways to monitor your behavior. That's what's happening with update attacks. So, and again, almost all the flaws they're trying to fix are astronomically unlikely. They can never protect you against the real new threats, which is legalized spyware, toolbars, fake cleaners, or, of course, like I said before, support scams. Ironically, the hype and the update worship has created such hysteria that it's become incredibly easy to scare people out of money by calling them on the phone and saying scary words and claiming you can help them. And that's what a support scam is. And that is the only threat that I see day in and day out. So I should have waited to read my little thing there, because apparently my little statement covered all those points. But anyway, that's that. All right, wow, we're getting along here in the episode. I'd better get going. So next thing here, this one's from 2022, businessinsider.com. This is from my friend James. IBM execs call older workers dino babies in an age bias lawsuit. They said older workers are dino babies who should be extinct. And that was found in internal emails during that lawsuit. That's amazing. And that is yet more evidence of the condescension that this industry has for anything old, right? They worship anything new, regardless of whether or not it's better. It's usually not better. And then they love what we call deprecation. They love chopping off anything that's old, because then we don't have to deal with it anymore, right? So how would you like that if you were some feature on a computer that some person actually needed a feature on the computer, and the computer guy said, I don't want to deal with you anymore, and chopped it off, right? And just abandoned it. And they're treating human beings the same way. All right, here's one here. Listener Matt, the Wall Street Journal. Portable monitors, the amazing productivity gadget you didn't know you needed. All right, so a lot of y'all have dual monitors on your desk, and that's pretty cool. I don't really do that. I did it in college, actually, because I had so many spare monitors. I figured, why not? So I was one of the first people in the world to do dual monitors. It was kind of cool. It might have been on my Compaq machine or one of my machines. And so I had two monitors set up just because I had an extra monitor. And it was sort of cool because it's one computer, but you have two monitors, so you can utilize that extra one. So it's like having a large screen, except there's a little line in the middle. So you can now buy monitors that are thin enough and light enough, and they have their own battery, or they might not have a battery, but they might be powered off of the USB-C port. So that's cool. I mean, Lord knows we don't need more batteries in the world. But a lot of these monitors, they're just lightweight, and they can draw enough power from the USB-C port, or they'll have their own little phone charger style power cord, and then they'll go into your HDMI, whatever. So that's cool. My client David uses one of those for travel. So you can bring your laptop with you, and then one of these little thin portable screens, these portable monitors. That's neat. The other thing they mention here is that, so not only do you have lightweight displays, but they also have repurposed tablets. And I love the idea of repurposing, right? But the problem is this. It's not like the tablet has a built-in mode, okay? Like a lot of all-in-one computers, like I know certain models of Apple iMac have a mode where it's not a computer for the moment, it turns off its computer brain, and it's just a dumb monitor, and it takes an HDMI cord, and it acts as a dumb monitor. So that's really cool, right? So that 3 weeks from now, when that computer is too slow to use, hey, you can still turn it into dumb monitor mode, and you get your HDMI cord and plug it in, and you're done. It's a dumb monitor. But if you have a tablet, you can do something called second screen software. Okay, so Apple built it into the iPad, and Windows can also connect to certain Samsung tablets or Android tablets, right? Where, okay, fine. So those tablets aren't dumb monitors. They're still tablets. They're still tablets running operating systems that are deeply, deeply controlled by Apple or Samsung or Google. They just are, for the moment, they're deciding to display the contents of your laptop. So it's sort of cool that you can reuse an older tablet like that, but it's not eternal like a real monitor and a real monitor cable, right? It's just an extra thing. And a lot of times, the other problem is they have to run evil software, right? Because tablets don't have real inputs on them, like real monitor inputs. They just have evil software. So you have to have the laptop itself and the tablet both running the same software, and it has to be the same version, and they both have to be on the same Wi-Fi network, and they both have to have the same everything. And then all that data has to travel somewhere through your Wi-Fi network, over the river and through the woods, and back into your tablet. So it's sort of a cool idea. If you have a spare tablet, might as well go ahead and try it. But just like everything else in this industry, it's a time bomb. It's not a true, real monitor. So it's cool if you got one. You don't have to go out and buy something, but just know that. I just want you guys to know the concepts of this industry. And yet again, it's a cobbled together scheme. It's like a pyramid or a Ponzi scheme or whatever. It's something that'll only work temporarily if all the stars align. Okay, a couple more. AutoWeek.com. Tesla's phantom braking incidents spark NHTSA inquiry. The NHTSA has opened an investigation into instances of phantom braking in certain Tesla models after receiving 354 reports of sudden braking when using their autopilot. Okay, the complaints allege that while using the auto driving, autopilot feature, including adaptive cruise control, the vehicle unexpectedly applies the brakes while driving at highway speeds. Just randomly slams on the brakes, right? And again, I'm not in favor of a full driving whatever. I think society has to get used to these things a generation at a time, really. Like cruise control was fine 40 years ago. That came out. That's fine. And I actually like radar cruise control. My buddy's mom has it. I tried it. It's great. But the fact that this stuff is driven by evil software means it's going to do random things like slam on the brakes on the highway at random, okay? Like the radar cruise control that I used was a simple system. It was run by firmware and it was extremely simple. And simplicity is good, okay? If you have evil software running it, anything can happen at any time because it's built on billions of layers of other pieces of software that are built on billions of layers of other pieces of software, okay? So what if you had a driver who was taking drugs and acted erratically and slammed on the brakes during the highway drives and other random things? Would you trust them? No. Nobody would. So why would you trust software? Okay, here's another one in the software realm. CarAndDriver.com, 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee stop sale ordered over unwanted immobilizing, right? So we've talked a lot about how the fact that we're not using keys anymore, we're using evil computer chips that are in a key fob, that means massive amounts of vulnerability, right? If you have a real metal key that you turn, you twist the key in your car, that's great. Someone actually has to be physically present to do that. But with the software, the only thing software has done has allowed it for anyone, anywhere to be able to start your car, okay? And by the way, it also allows for false alarms. So your car can blow a false alarm on you. And that's what's happening here. The issue is leaving some of these Grand Cherokees immobilized. Jeep says it's contacting customers to set up a free service, blah, blah, blah. The key fob, sometimes on brand new vehicles, will fail to be recognized and the vehicle will become immobilized, reacting to what it thinks is an unauthorized break-in. So it blows a false alarm on you. What else is new? Yeah. All right, here's one here, and I might have talked about this before, but this came out, I started doing this a few years ago, and it is a really cool idea. Again, it's one of these cool ideas. It's not perfect, but it's cool. This is Chrome OS, okay? So if you go to chromeos.google, that's the actual website, chromeos.google, you can download something called Chrome OS, and you actually have to use Chrome on that particular computer you're using, and then you get a thumb drive that you're willing to sacrifice to the cause, and the Chrome browser and the chromeos.google will take your hard drive, they'll erase it, and they'll put an installer on it, right? This is for experts only. Don't worry if you're not. And that thumb drive then is a powerful tool. You can take that thumb drive, plug it into almost any old computer, let's say 15 years old or less. Okay, so any computer that's like 10 to 15 years old, I'll do this for. It erases the whole computer. Okay, so make sure you back up your documents first and your photos. It erases the whole computer and turns it into a Chromebook. It's a beautiful way to keep all of these perfectly good computers out of the landfill, right? I personally, as I've told you many times before, I personally prefer Mint, right? Because it's a real operating system. It looks like Windows, and you can do browser, and you can do a few programs and whatever. Chrome OS isn't a true, real, full operating system. It's an extremely basic operating system, and it's extremely locked down, and everything you do is extremely controlled by Google. But anyway, it's a cool idea for those who don't know about Mint, and for technicians who want to just take a computer that's 10, 15 years old. Again, get your data off of there first, because it'll wipe the computer, it'll create a fresh, empty machine, it'll turn it into a Chromebook, and then you can give it to someone in need, right? Someone in your inner city tutoring house, or someone in some foreign country who doesn't have a computer. It's a beautiful thing, okay? And their slogan is good for your business and the planet. Absolutely, folks. Absolutely. So God bless those people who are trying to keep these perfectly good computers out of the landfill. Unlike Microsoft, remember the cash grab scandal last October of 2025, where Microsoft said, hey, you know what? There are 400 million computers running Windows 10. We don't even want you upgrading them to Windows 11. Nope, put them in the garbage. because you might get viruses if you don't put it in the garbage and then buy a new one. And of course, Microsoft makes money for every new computer that is sold with their filthy software. Couple more here. This is MacRumors.com, 2022 February. New York Attorney General issues an AirTag consumer alert over stalking concerns. Okay, so for those of y'all who don't know, the AirTag is a teeny tiny Apple computer chip with a little teeny battery. Okay, with a little coin cell, they call them. It's a battery that's the size of a coin. And every few seconds, it'll emit a signal that says, "Hi, I'm AirTag number 123456, and you can find me. Here's where I am. Here's my location." Really cool idea. So it's one of these things that's a really cool idea, but as usual, it was formulated without any regard to consequences, okay? So the original intent was to help you find your lost stuff. You could put it in your backpack, or you can put it in your purse, or you can put it in your car, and so on. And I have one in each of my cars, and it's really cool for that. The problem is they didn't bother to realize, hey, wait a minute, people might abuse this thing, right? The fact that it's so tiny means I can walk up to anyone while walking around New York City and just plop an AirTag in their backpack, and they'll never know, and then I can track them, right? No one bothers to think of this stuff. So, of course, there's always a reactionary reaction where it's, oh, we'd better call the Attorney General. And the Attorney General says, across the country, Apple AirTags are being misused to track people and their belongings to cause harm. Tracking people without their awareness or consent is a serious felony, right? So the fact that they put the word serious in there means that, oh, well, we mean business now, right? I urge all New Yorkers to pay close attention to their belongings. Okay, so because of the fact that the jokers at Apple came up with this idea and unleashed it on humanity willy-nilly with no regard to anything, means that we have to now live in fear of yet another threat. And then the Attorney General, 800 centuries later, the Attorney General comes around and says, well, this is a serious felony. Because that's all she can do is stomp her feet and make warnings to people, right? So it's the least possible efficient way to go about anything, right? Ideally, in an ideal world, people would think about the consequences of what they do and warn each other and educate each other and so on. But unfortunately, this is how the industry is right now. Jokers come up with garbage. We have to put up with it and be confused. Bad guys get away with everything. And then 40,000 years later, lawmakers just say, that's a serious threat. And that's it. All right, couple more here. What do you know? You know what? We're going to be... All right, one more. How's that? This is what the remote work revolution means for cities. And this is from theatlantic.com, 2022 February. America is slowly returning to normal. Stadiums are packed and so on. But even as they resume normal leisure activities, Americans still aren't going back to the office. Office attendance is at 33% of its pre-pandemic numbers. All right, fine. And again, we've seen the results. Here we are a few years later. We've seen the results from this. And look, if you're more productive at home, great. I love working from home now that I'm spending more time with the book and the podcasts and everything. I love it, and I get so much more done versus sitting in a cubicle and whatever. And that's awesome. But I'm always focused on my work wherever I am in the world. At any time, I'm worried about my business and worried about my industry. And I suppose I should come up with some concrete goals instead of just save the world from tech, right? As much as I'd love to put Silicon Valley out of business once and for all, I suppose I should come up with more realistic goals, huh? I gotta think on that one. Somebody remind me of that. But anyway, so that's the deal. Because I actually care about my profession, it doesn't matter where I am. But a lot of people are home in their pajamas and slippers and stuff, and they're less productive. Okay, fine. But here's the real fallout from all this, right? Finding a human being to help you in a retail setting is like pulling teeth. That's the real problem right now. And unfortunately, as more and more people quit their jobs and stay home and smoke, that means the precious few people who are out there working retail now have double the workload on them, right? So I call that concept work inequality. You know what? We're going to do one more really quick here. February 2022, listener Matt sent this one in from Wall Street Journal. NFTs, cryptocurrencies, and Web3 are multi-level marketing schemes for a new generation. Trendy digital assets are ridiculously easy to create, and that's a problem, okay? So we all remember the multi-level marketing, the pyramid schemes, where someone formulates a vitamin and then hands it to a bunch of lonely people who are at home and says, give me $600 to make your own business. And then you go out there and make your own business. And then you sell these vitamins to people who don't need them, right? It's a push model. Come up with something no one needs and then take lonely people and make them push them on people who don't need them, okay? That's the deal with pyramid schemes. And I was always offended when people would come up to me and say, do you want to start your own real business? And whenever they say real business, or the other day someone was telling me how they talked to him for like an hour and they refused to tell him what the actual business was. Hello, that's a warning. Anyway, I feel insulted when they say real business because I am a real businessman. And in college, I started real businesses. And ever since then, I've started real businesses. And it takes a lot of work. And shame on anyone who wants to make one of these businesses and call it a real business, because it's not a tree, it's not a fruit, it's a weed, right? It's fake and it's not a real business. All right, anyway. So the point is, these MLM pyramid schemes are now happening in a different way. And I see what they're trying to say here. I mean, that'll always be the most evil thing is the pyramid scheme. But they're trying to say that NFTs and cryptocurrency are similar to that, all right? So let's talk about what they are. NFT is non-fungible token, all right? And that's a whole explanation on that, but basically someone decided that if they can come up with a little piece of artwork, a little digital painting, then they can sell it, and they can sell the rights to it and all this stuff. And my cousin told me about this back in 2022, and I knew right away, because I have this thing that no one has, it's called common sense, and I said, yeah, but there's no real purpose for it, right? Just because something's digital and fancy and complicated doesn't mean it's useful, okay? So I knew it wasn't going to last long, right? And the other thing is cryptocurrency, which basically just means an online currency, right? And Bitcoin is a great idea, and it's awesome, and it's a private currency, and it's a great idea for a lot of things. But unfortunately, anyone can now make one, and it creates a lot of chaos. But on top of that, it means that, so they're making you think that, well, I have a cryptocurrency and it's just like Bitcoin, therefore it's going to be just as successful. But there's no guarantee, right? I could make something really beautiful, some sculpture in my backyard, and I can say, this is going to be successful, just like Michelangelo's David. But just because it's the same kind of thing doesn't mean it's going to be just as successful, okay? So that's the story here. Here's the article. In a recent ad for cryptocurrency exchange FTX, Tom Brady asks everyone, are you in? And are you going to join him buying some cryptocurrency? And it's a standard psychological tactic, the fear of missing out, right? If Tom Brady says, are you in? Then I have to jump in, right? And unfortunately, people don't realize that when you do a commercial like that, there's a lot of sports heads out there who are going to look at that and say, I'll do whatever Tom does. Right? And it's a siren song as old as the promise of attaining financial freedom by selling herbal supplements, cosmetics, or leggings, and enhanced and refined by our digital communication. Basic economics suggests an unhappy outcome. When the demand for something is limited, there are only so many people on Earth and so much traditional money and so many currencies, and the supply is infinite, then the average price of it is going to be zero, right? If you have a billion different cryptocurrencies, not all of them are going to be worth some, right? And if one were to distill the entire promise of Web3, this whole new thing, it would be this. By virtue of the ease of creating new tokens and building things around it, Web3 has the potential to securitize something, right? To financialize it. In other words, to monetize it, okay? But research has found that most of these NFTs, these non-fungible tokens, don't sell, right? These little digital paintings. And the problem with the cryptocurrencies is something called rug pulls. Okay, so let's say I do a cryptocurrency and I call it Markcoin, and everyone buys into it and yada yada. Usually these cryptocurrencies are set up so the founder gets 50% of the value, right? So let's say I'm 50% owner of Markcoin, and then the other 50% I just sell to people on the internet. And eventually, if more people buy it, the value of Markcoin goes up, therefore my shares go up, all of our shares go up, right? Similar to a stock company in that regard. But then all of a sudden I do a rug pull, which means I sell all my shares. And too bad for you, I cash out and all you guys are left with a cryptocurrency that's worthless. So that is the danger there. There are some legitimate uses for this whole blockchain style of technology. You can track your shipping containers with it and so on. But basically, in retrospect, I am very glad that NFTs have not taken off. And I'm very glad that the fad cryptocurrencies really fizzled out, right? People caught on to the fact that just because it's a cryptocurrency doesn't mean it's worth buying into, because anyone can make one. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and happy Valentine's weekend. I am Mark Anthony Arena. If you want to join the good fight and protect people from the IT industry, then I can teach you how to do in-home tech support for seniors at becomeanexorcist.com. If you want to buy my book, go to my main website, thecomputerexorcist.com. Thanks so much. Talk to you next time.